total expenditure is projected at 226.7 billion, 21.6% of GDP. This projection reflects a reduction of 6.1 percentage points of GDP in total expenditure commitment basis compared to the outturn in 2022. This large decrease comes from the combination of fiscal consolidation efforts of 4.9 percentage points of GDP, reflecting an adjustment in revenue by 1.1 percentage point and primary expenditure by 3.9 percentage points of GDP. The potential interest rate savings from the ongoing external debt operation will further bolster public finance sustainability. Mr. Speaker, based on the estimates for total revenue and grants and total expenditure, including arrears clearance, the overall budget balance to be financed in a fiscal deficit of 61.9 billion, equivalent to 5.9% of GDP. The corresponding primary balance is a deficit of 5.9 billion, equivalent to 0.6% of GDP.
Government plans to enact the Business Regulatory Reform Bill to enhance the quality and transparency of regulatory administration in doing business. According to Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, this will establish a predictable regulatory environment for trade and industry and attract foreign businesses.
The business reforms are part of the government's agenda for economic and industrial transformation. The bill seeks to improve the quality and transparency of regulatory administration in Ghana. It will also create a predictable business regulatory environment conducive to private sector development and make Ghana the most business-friendly country in Africa.
Enhancing the business regulatory reform, crowding in private sector financing of 20 billion through foreign direct investments, and amendments to the GIPC Act has been completed and submitted to Parliament. The Speaker, the group strategy sets ambitious targets for easing access of the domestic private sector, including medium and long-term finance at competitive rates. Government will leverage the plans of the Development Bank of Ghana, GESL, Venture Capital Trust Fund, and the Ghana Investment Infrastructure Fund to provide loans, partial guarantees, and venture capital to private entities with transformational and strategic projects in agriculture.
The Finance Minister adds that interventions such as the Mutual Prosperity Dialogue and the Economic Enclave Project will enhance growth for local businesses.
We will, through the Ghana Mutual Prosperity Dialogue, be intentional about collaboration with the private sector and our development partners to support local businesses, attract FDI, and enhance the economic prospects of our people, with a singular aim to create sustainable jobs across all communities. In this view, the Ministry has teamed up with MEDA and is committing 1 billion Ghana cedis to ensure that our enclave projects and developing our productive capacity for exports.
The government is also projecting a 6.3% growth in the services and industry sector in 2024.
All right, so the Finance Minister also outlined a number of tax reliefs that they are giving, and we're going to run you through some of the specific areas he touched on, which are going to be benefiting from the new relief of taxes that the government intends to roll out in 2024. So clearly it says for here that government is introducing a 5% VAT flat rate on all commercial properties to simplify administration. It says it's going to review and expand environmental excise duty to cover plastic packaging, industrial and vehicle emissions to address plastic waste and pollution. And then also it says that it's going to review the fees for stamp duties in 2024. So other reliefs that the government intends to roll out is a waiver of import duties on electric vehicles for public transportation for the next 8 years. There's going to be a waive import duty on knockdown electric vehicles for 8 years, which primarily means that if the item you are importing into the country is an electric vehicle, whether knockdown or brand new, you're going to be enjoying some tax waivers for at least 8 years. Then there is an extended zero, it's going to extend zero rate on VAT on locally assembled vehicles for 2 more years. It means that there is already a VAT rate for locally assembled vehicles. However, it is extending that zero rate for another 2 years. So one particular issue that happened in Parliament today has to do with some persons that were demonstrating, asking for government to totally scrap or abolish taxes on sanitary pads. Well, government has factored a portion of that in the budget. It says that there's going to be a zero rate VAT on locally produced sanitary pads, meaning only those that are produced locally are going to be enjoying this zero rate on VAT. Also, import duty waivers on the raw materials for local sanitary pads manufacture. So although the import duties are going to be, there's a waiver on it for the sanitary pads that are going to be imported, it is only for the raw materials that are being imported to process or manufacture locally made sanitary pads. Those are the only ones that are going to be enjoying the VAT rate, the zero VAT rate. So when it comes to items, there's also going to be a zero rate of VAT on locally manufactured African prints for 2 more years. And then import exemptions are going to be placed on agricultural machinery, equipment, and inputs. Also, medical consumables, raw materials are also going to be enjoying some import exemptions. And then also those that are going to be imported for pharmaceutical industry. They are the ones that government has announced that is going to be enjoying some tax relief. So those are some of the major. Then maybe just before we go, government says it's going to be engaging the Ghana Medical Association on waivers for importation of vehicles, and then also provide 15% cost of living allowance, what we call the COLA, for 6 months to cushion workers during economic challenge. So the specific one about the Ghana Medical Association, a few days ago, they raised concerns about government needing to reassess some of the benefits they enjoy as medical professionals. Probably this is one of them. But let's go to the phone now and engage economist Professor Godfred Bokping, who has been following this particular conversation and the presentation of the budget in Parliament today. He's joined us via phone. Prof, good evening and thank you for your time.
Yes, good evening and good evening to our cherished listeners.
Right, 2 days ago and even yesterday, we spoke to you asking your expectation ahead of the budget presentation. Today, the finance minister has gone to fulfill constitutional duty of letting us know how government intends to use and generate revenue in 2024. Does that align with what you were expecting?
No. I think that the budget failed to deliver on my expectations. Maybe so many Ghanaians, especially the private sector, especially the manufacturing sector. Of course, we recognize the challenges. We are under an IMF program. We have already signed an MOU with the IMF that we will keep to certain program targets, which also includes our revenue to GDP ratio. Under the IMF supported program, we are hoping that we will scale up our revenue to GDP ratio to about 18.7% by 2026. 2024, we have a target that we have to meet, and on oil tax revenue at 15%. Right? So there are constraints within which we are working, but precisely that is the point that we have been making over the years, that the cost of correcting economic disruptions could be very high. It could be very high in terms of the price that the citizens, the households, and private sector have to pay in order to restore macroeconomic stability, and how long it will also take. That is exactly what you are seeing here. But there are some quick things that we can look at from the budget. One, the GDP growth forecast for 2024 is not sufficient. It's not sufficient because that is not the kind of growth that will lift thousands or millions of Ghanaians out of poverty and narrow the inequality. No. So that is something worth noting. Then again, you're also looking at the growth drivers, right? Which means that we must go beyond just general policies and look at specific policies to target and address certain structural bottlenecks in the economy. I'll give you an example. Even though the first 2 quarters of this year, growth is projected to outperform the IMF forecast, probably if we continue like that to the end of the year, the growth is essentially driven by agriculture, and within agriculture, we are talking about crops and livestock. Then within service, we are talking about ICT. Actually, industry that holds the job creation capacity of this economy is still contracting. The subsector within industry that is actually recording positive growth is mining and quarrying. But if you look at the data from 2012 to 2020 up to 2021, you can see that even though mining is contributing almost 20% to the GDP growth within that period, mining is not contributing to job creation anymore that much. And quarrying. So if you find that within industry, it's mining and quarrying that is driving that growth, and that is largely jobless, it means that we are not engineering job-rich growth, and that is problematic. How do you do that? And that is not rocket science. If you look at the level of interest rates, government itself is borrowing on the average 30%. The Ghana reference rate is 32%. Policy rate is in the 30s. That kind of interest rate is not user-friendly for manufacturing and for job creation. Now, and the question you want to ask yourself is, does the 2024 budget address that? The answer is no.
Okay, Prof.
Again,
Let's look at the specific component of the address where the finance minister, for instance, says that the revenue government projects it wants to, accrue for itself is 176.46 billion Ghana cedis. However, the expenditure is around 226. Is it economically sound? Is it even feasible?
So what it means is that government is going to borrow, government is projecting to borrow this year the difference to close that. The government is going to run a budget deficit, right? And that is also an indication of the borrowing requirement of the government. But again, the overall financing arrangement will also depend on the progress that the government makes with the external debt restructuring. And let me tell you how that is working. If you look at the domestic debt restructuring that the government did quite recently, the fiscal savings from that cumulatively is over 60 billion cedis. I think it's around 61 billion cedis in terms of fiscal space that has been created. The real impact of that is that has dragged down our weighted average interest cost from approximately 22%, I think 21.2% end of 2022 to something around 12.1% or so. Right. So that difference is savings for the government, and you can see how government is deploying using that fiscal space. So if you see part of the tax relief they are giving, that is revenue losses, right? But government is hoping that its overall expenditure will slow down, even though it's going up to 200 and something billion. If you look at the growth rates in there overall compared to revenue, the savings from expenditure in 2024 will be slightly higher than the savings from revenue side, even though revenue is still going up. That tells you how that government is using the fiscal space, which has reduced essentially its interest payment in 2024 compared to 2023. Because in 2023, government projected to spend approximately 53 billion cedis on its interest payment, and that value has gone down in 2024, and it's going to continue to, unless government decides to ramp up expensive debt in the next couple of years. Of course, this is Ghana. It's not so strange.
Professor Godfrey Bokpin, it's early days yet. Certainly in the coming days, we'll be engaging you further to, further break down the budget that was read earlier today. Professor Godfrey Bokpin is an economist.
Yeah, meanwhile, government has budgeted 220 million cedis to support communities affected by the Akosombo spillage and floods in the Oti, Savannah and Bono East regions.
The Volta River Authority, VRA, in September initiated a controlled discharge at the Akosombo and Kpong dams due to the continuous increase in the water level caused by substantial inflows. Communities downstream the Volta Lake bore the brunt after the Volta River Authority spilled excess water from the Akosombo Dam. The flooding led to the destruction of property, running into millions of cedis, damaged farms, and affected the economic livelihoods of people in the affected area. Presenting the 2024 budget statement in Parliament, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta announced that allocations have been made to cater for the communities affected. The allocation will also benefit areas above the Akosombo Dam affected by flooding, but not due to the spillage of the dam.
Mr. Speaker, government has budgeted an amount of 220 million to support the relief phase for the communities affected by the Akosombo spillage, as well as floods upstream in the Oti, Savannah, and Bono East regions.
For the restoration phase, the Finance Minister told Parliament that the government, through the Ministry of Agriculture, would allocate additional resources to support the restoration of livelihoods.
We have requested funding from the World Bank under the IDA crisis response window to support the resettlement of the victims, restoration of livelihoods, compensation, and reconstruction of infrastructure in the affected communities.
The National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, has been conducting environmental and sanitation impact assessment in areas affected by the spillage of the Akosombo and Kpong dams. With floodwaters beginning to recede, it would take a while for residents to return to their homes.
Let's focus on some tangibles which you can actually see and feel, because the Finance Minister says that the government will continue to complete road projects to improve accessibility and safety for the ordinary Ghanaian. The Minister also promised a 50% funding increase to the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty, that's LEAP program.
Having promised a year of roads for 2 successive years, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta this time did not tag 2024 a year of roads. He simply listed projects at various stages of completion.
The following projects are ongoing and at various stages of completion. Kumasi Lake Road and Drainage Extension Project is completed. Reconstruction of Bichem Techimanchia Akomadin Road is 71% complete. Government is in the preparation for the reconstruction of the Accra-Tema motorway under the road sector's public-private partnership with GIF is on course. The concession agreement and draft engineering, procurement and construction EPC agreement have been approved by Cabinet and will be submitted to Parliament for approval shortly.
A notable concern, however, was renegotiation with external creditors to enable completion of some major projects which have stalled in different parts of the country.
We continue to improve on our road networks, and Mr. Speaker, once the official creditor committee has made its announcement, we will continue with all extendedly funded projects that will be resumed.
On social interventions, the Finance Minister announced government's intention to improve on the various programs despite concerns of an IMF program.
Support for beneficiaries of the LEAP program was sustained in 2023. Government invested some 298 million to support 350,000 families. In 2024, the program will improve financing by 50% more and continue to provide meals to more schools to enhance basic school enrollment. The National Health Insurance Scheme, Mr. Speaker, is now active with coverage of 60 million people, representing 80% of the targeted group. Efforts to integrate the Ghana card into the enrollment system are progressing steadily. Mr. Speaker, over 740 million has been invested to feed over 3.8 million pupils, one hot meal a day in 10,000 of our public basic schools. In 2024, the program will continue to provide hills to enhance basic school enrollment.
And spare parts dealers at Abosiokai say they are disappointed in the 2024 budget statements because they failed to capture major concerns, including the electronic and COVID-19 levies. They also want government to explain why arrangements will be made for electronic vehicles when the country itself has no systems in place for its progression. George Queenan reports.
Expectations and stakes are always high ahead of budget presentations, and here at Abosiokai, it's no different. Well, the sector minister, Ken Oforiatta, has presented the 2024 statement, and for some spare part dealers here at Abosiokai, they expected the e-levy, COVID levy, and the reintroduction of road tolls captured in the statement. But now they are disappointed, and they are saying this budget is empty.
COVID tax and so, na minister sani abayano. The
COVID levy and road tolls were not captured, and I feel very disappointed.
Very disappointed because to
me, need the budget no kind, though, man could school and catch it, but the Brofuno can be to me say a empty budget.
The budget is an empty one. Even the road tolls were not captured because government has failed woefully.
On the waiving of import duties for 8 years on the importation of electric vehicles for public transportation, they say it is a misplaced priority.
They've really given us hard times to trust them, first of all. You know, there's a whole lot of things, reading budgets and promises and all these things we hear. It's even concerning even our duties when they were coming into power and all that. You know, there was a whole lot of promises. We can answer. I go back to Africa.
Countries see Ghana, home situation, mine situation. I don't think this is the right time. I say all the electric cars.
The country is not in a right state to go electronic.
There are more things you should have spoke about.
Well, the 2024 budget statement is ready now, and so we are waiting to see how some of these things captured in the statement will be implemented. George Queenan, TV3 News, Abosiokai.
Was presented by Finance Minister.
I was looking at projects like Buankra in Lamport, which was started by the MPP1. Talk about the Afari Hospital, and then talk about Kufu. And then up to now, Sofolai interchange. You don't even know the percentage that they have reached. So we were expecting that at least these projects, the finance minister, together with the majority group, led by Honorable Chairman Sambonsu, who happens to be the leader of government business, at least will sit down and look at these projects and bring it into the budget and give us the timelines.
We were expecting that the COVID levy will be scrapped from the taxes, but as a government, he thought otherwise, so we cannot say anything about that. We thank God that they did not add any new taxes.
Kumasi project, the Oma Amreye, and Oma be brave Kumasi. Mini papa no best had no man dear Wayam Medjano because a drum Oma Jaya go. And so quite Omunye.
And away from the budget statements, Ghana will play host to an array of dignitaries for the 4th African Forum of Lion Club International. The forum is aimed at providing an avenue for providing necessary support for developing countries while expanding the reach of the group to various countries.
The Lions Club has been responsible for key supports for critical areas within the Ghanaian space. The president of Lions Club International, Lion Dr. Patty Hill, called on the young people to join the club to make a difference in society. Through the Lions Club International Foundation, members of the club have strengthened local communities through hands-on service and humanitarian projects, including donations to the recent flood victims of the Akosombo Dam spillage.
Young people are absolutely willing to volunteer and serve in communities and to network across the districts and around the world to bring that possibility of making a difference, of changing the world to make it a better place, because they are invested in the future, because they see a social need and they want to be involved in the solution, or they see an environmental challenge and they want to be involved in solving that.
Addressing some misconceptions against the club, the district governor for District 418, Lion Keith Baba Hudson, said that the organization is open to all and not only the affluent in society.
I don't think all of us there are people at the top, but people from various backgrounds, professional backgrounds, people with skills, knowledge, experiences, and people who, the underlying thing is having the passion to serve. Lions concentrates on vision, diabetes, we have hunger, we have environment. We also concentrate on the youth and then humanitarian and then disaster issues. Luckily this year, the theme for the international president is on environment.
The Lions International, a global humanitarian organization, helps to improve health and well-being, strengthen communities, and supports the less privileged in society.
Still watching News 360 on TV3. Stay with us. When we return, we'll let you know what's happening in the world of business. Welcome back to News 360. Time now for business. Michael is with us. Michael, so, a part of what the finance minister said was that in 2024, government is projecting to have, 1 trillion Ghana cedi GDP.
Exactly.
How does that work out?
Interesting stuff. And he also indicated that they were projecting a 2.8% growth target. But that's quite interesting because quarter on quarter, we've done about 3%. I was wondering why we weren't aiming higher.
But we are revising
especially with
downwards.
a victory budget.
Yeah, including budget.
Well, let's get to the details now. Good evening. Welcome to the business segment here on News 360. My name is Michael Obudu. Now, the government has set a growth target of 2.8% for 2024. This is higher than the 1.5% target introduced in the 2023 mid-year budget, but still considerably lower than the rate recorded in the past 3 quarters. In his presentation, the finance minister projected growth target for 2024 at 2.8%. Interesting development, which is quite lower than the average growth targets that have been achieved this year.
Overall real GDP growth of at least 2.8%, non-oil real GDP growth of at least 2.1%, end period inflation rate of 5.0%, primary balance on commitment basis of a surplus of 0.5% of GDP, and gross international reserve to cover not less than 3 months of imports.
Mr. Foriata, in his presentation, also provided information on some tax waivers the government had introduced in the budget.
The zero rate of VAT on locally manufactured African prints for 2 more years, to waive import duties on import of electric vehicles for public transportation for a period of 8 years. Mr. Speaker, to zero rate VAT on locally produced sanitary pads. Mr. Speaker, to grant import duty waivers for raw materials for the local manufacture of sanitary pads. Mr. Speaker, to grant exemptions on the importation of agricultural machinery equipment and inputs and medical consumables.
Michael Obudu, 3 Business, Parliament House, Accra. Meanwhile, Associate Director of Tax at the accounting and auditing firm KPMG, Gordon Dade, says the 8 tax reliefs announced by government are not enough to cushion businesses and Ghanaians.
Some of the policies that government has actually introduced or announced is actually in line with some of the findings that we got. So, our respondents felt that they were not expecting new taxes, but government should rather bring some reliefs and some exemptions, in 2024. And that is exactly some of the things that we are seeing. So my initial thought are that, yes, there's still some room for government to, perhaps look at some of the recommendations that businesses have made in terms of the maybe reducing or reviewing some of the taxes. But again, the minister gave the reassurance that he will work with a standing committee of the Prosperity Dialogue to see how they can work together to bring some respite in terms of reviewing some of the taxes going forward into the next year. So I think it's not that bad. we wait to see how these things will be implemented in 2024.
Let's stay a while longer on the 2024 budget as government has earmarked 1 billion cedis for the second phase of its much-touted Planting for Food and Jobs program. In the 2024 budget presentation, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta said the funding to be managed by the Millennium Development Authority, MIDA, will be dedicated to providing critical infrastructure as well as clearing and developing land for private sector actors in the economic enclave projects.
To implement the economic enclave at scale and speed, as I mentioned, Ghana cedis 1 billion has been allocated to Millennium Development Authority to complement PFJ 2.0. This funding will be dedicated to providing critical infrastructure, including irrigation canals, as well as cleaning and developing land for private sector actors in the EEP.
According to the Finance Minister, the 2024 budget, through the second phase of the Planting for Food and Jobs, will also address the shortfalls in the local production of prominent vegetables, including onions and tomatoes.
In 2022, demand for onions was 314,000 metric tons, while the local production was 179,000 metric tons. In addition, the national demand for tomatoes in 2022 was estimated at 1.3 million metric tons, while local production stood at 468,000 metric tons.
The funding will also help address the heavy reliance on imports of poultry into the country by supporting some selected local producers to boost production.
Meridian Port Services Limited, MPS, operator of the Tema Port, has commemorated the commencement of Phase 2 of the Tema Port expansion project, commissioning 15 gantry cranes and breaking ground for the second phase of the Tema Port expansion project. President Akufo-Addo said the MPS Terminal 3 infrastructure is a logistics platform that will drive the nation's vision to reality.
The commissioning of the 15 gantry cranes, according to the Chief Executive Officer of MPS, Mohammed Samara, will create more than 3,000 jobs for the youth. He added that the project will be one of the most significant and successful public-private partnerships Ghana has embarked on.
In this facility, we have created about 3,000 jobs, permanent, and plus during the construction, we added in phase 1 5,000, and this job will add probably another 3,000 jobs, But that's not what it is. What it is if tomorrow factories start to set up in Tema Township, those factories, how many are they going to employ? And this is the key thing, the economic impact of such infrastructure supersedes the direct employment for people to work in this infrastructure.
Commissioning the project, President Akufo-Addo says he believes Ghana has the potential to become the world's leading exporter of agricultural produce.
Ghana has the potential to become the world's leading exporter of agricultural produce, thanks in part to favorable weather conditions, ample water supply, and fertile land. However, what we have lacked over the years is a modernized, robust logistics chain infrastructure required to help realize this potential.
Meridian Port Services stands as the embodiment of collaboration between the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority and the Meridian Port Holdings. It is a joint venture between APM Terminals and Africa Global Logistics.
And that'll be all for the business segment here on News 360. My name is Michael Obodu. Next to sports.
Your man, Rogers in Kumasi, with an eye on the 2026 World Cup qualifying match against Madagascar on Friday. My colleague Rafał Sarkodie was at the Bavaria Stadium, where the team held their second training session and has updates.
So this is day 2 of the Black Stars preparation training ahead of that particular World Cup qualifying game against Madagascar. It is very crucial for the Stars. And so once again, it is behind closed doors. The fans, some few fans were here, but they were denied access to the stadium to see the Black Stars train at the Bavaria Stadium. Well, some of the fans have been voicing out their frustrations and expectations for the team on Friday.
We are expecting the Black Stars to win this qualifying match against the Madagascars here, because over the previous 2 friendlies. I mean, they really disappointed us.
Yeah, but I think you be your prayers and by need your mom and we. And so you actually do fear that you be samba about support too.
What we can also confirm is that goalkeeper Lawrence Atizigi trained with the team today, and that means that Chris Hutton has a full complement of his squad for that particular Friday encounter with Madagascar. Well, we have also been to the Pajo Stadium where Madagascar had their day 2 training today at the Pajo Stadium at KNUST, and we can tell you that indeed Madagascar were here and they have been having training. This is the second training that Madagascar had, and they are hoping that tomorrow they will have a short engagement with the media as they build up to that Friday World Cup qualifying game against Ghana. Well, reporting for 3 Sports, this is Raphael Sarkodie from Kumasi.
Well, that's my colleague Raphael Sarkodie there, keeping an eye on the Black Stars as they train in Kumasi ahead of that game against Madagascar on Friday. Now, it has not been easy for Hearts of Lions since their return to the Ghana Premier League. The Kwando Giants stormed to the top flights with ease, but they are still searching for their first win after 10 games. Head coach Fatau Salifu is full of belief that his side can turn the corner.
Well, this is a very young team that anybody who has the chance of watching the team sees that we play the best of football so far in the league. But I think that we are yet to, get our scoring ways. That is what is worrying us for now. So I believe that we are still on the league and we are working so hard to start scoring. And I'm sure when we start scoring, the results will change. We don't concede. Of course, we play good football. At the end, we dominate the game, but scoring has been the challenge. So we are working on it.
Right, so this and many more stories will be live on GPL Express at 9:30 p.m. tonight with my colleague Kelvin Owusu. Do make a date. My name is Yalfo Sulabi. That's all the sports news this evening.